Appreciate you streaming in with us here on Birds 365. Day of game. Thursday action between the Eagles and the Vikings. We've been talking about the Eagles for an hour and change. Let's get a Viking perspective next. Former Viking player turned Viking broadcaster Ben Leber joins us here on Birds 365. Ben, you get a good night's sleep in your Philly hotel?
You know, I did. Unfortunately, because of my other work, I couldn't take the Vikings charter yesterday. So I had to fly in late. Got in about 12:30 last night. So I got some sleep, though.
All right, nice. Yeah, I had some difficulty getting up to Foxborough last week. That charter has got to be thrilling, Ben, to still have that. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. For those who don't know, Ben was a very good linebacker for the then San Diego Chargers before he went to Minnesota, played very well there as well. Now the Vikings sideline reporter. I've been harsh on the Vikings, and it's for one reason, Ben. I want your thoughts on this because I, like a lot of people, saw the Netflix show Quarterback, and I gained a lot of respect for Kirk Cousins watching that play. He took a beating last year. So my question is, how can the Vikings watch that program and say, all right, we're going to run it back with the interior of that offensive line? I fear for Kirk's life in this game with Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams, etc.
You know what? I think a lot of us thought the same thing. And, Ed Ingram, the right guard, was probably the weakest link of that whole group. And I think the thought was, like most rookies going into their second years, hey, he's going to take a big jump. All these guys, if we bring them back, they're going to meld together better. You bring in Josh Oliver, the blocking tight end, which, it does have a cascade effect down the line, how they can use protections, basically have an extra tackle out there in that tight end spot. I really think that they thought adding Oliver and the development of Ingram was going to be the thing that we needed. And, it still remains to be seen how much they develop, because Bradbury's out for this game. Darasov's banged up, although he got banged up earlier in the game last week, but still came back and played, and he actually played pretty well. Look, guys, that's still a question mark. I think a little bit did get answered last week because, believe it or not, as much as people want to say that the offensive line and pass protection played poorly, they really didn't. They actually played pretty well against a very blitz-heavy Tampa defense.
All right. Again, we didn't watch the game last week. You were there every single play. I look at the stat sheet, and one thing jumps out at me that I just can't come up with an explanation for, and that's TJ Hockenson, 8 catches, 35 yards. Now, if you're running back and you get 8 carries for 35 yards, that's okay. 8 receptions for 35. Was Tampa's defense just that good that they stopped him in his tracks every single time? Were there a couple of screens mixed in there where he just didn't get off the ball at all? Hockenson is one of the best 5 or 6 tight ends in the league, and 8 catches is good, but 35 yards stinks. What happened last week between the connections between Cousins and Hockenson?
Well, like I mentioned, it was the blitz heavy package that Tampa brought. And, when they disguised it, they did a really good job. The sack fumble that Antoine Winfield Jr. had, that was just a great disguised blitz. They brought more than we could protect, and they got us. Other times we guessed right. We knew when they were going to pressure. We knew kind of where they're going to pressure. And so in that case, you did have a lot of hot throws, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of just get the ball out. And so, unfortunately, you look at those numbers, Hockenson was on the receiving end of a lot of those where they were just short passes. And, I would admit that he's not the most dynamic run after catch guy. He can get open. He knows how to create separation. He's got good hands. He's a hard guy to cover for a lot of linebackers and safeties. But, he's not one of those guys that's going to explode on the ground after he catches the ball. So, he was getting tackled quite a bit right when he caught the ball. And, hopefully that changes in tonight's game. But, so far from last week, Philly, you guys know, they didn't blitz much. They just relied on a 4-man rush. Yeah. Do they look back at last week's tape from the Vikings and say, hey, we can get after these guys a little bit? So I'll be curious to see how much they blitz.
Yeah, it's the big Fangio scheme. You know about that last year from Ed Donatel, Ben. The drastic change from Ed to Brian Flores. I don't think you can see such a extreme. It's like if it were politics, it's like the most extreme right wing versus the most extreme left wing. He led. This is amazing to me. I told Jody he led the league in blitzes 5 or more week 1, and he also led the NFL in 3-man rushes. And he's using 7 different personnel groupings. I love Brian Flores. I love him, but I don't think he has the horses right now. One thing, I covered the Vikings before you got there, Ben. So the Denny Green sort of Mike Tice era. I think you got there with Brad, right?
Yeah, I got there in 06 with Brad.
Yeah. So I just missed you. But one thing the Vikings were always known for is great defensive linemen, going all the way back to Alan Page and Carl Eller and John Randall, Chris Dolman, Henry Thomas, go all the way up. Other than Daniil Hunter, I don't see a great front there. So ultimately, I love Brian. I love all he's going to throw, but do they have the horses right now?
It's a great question, John, and I'm with you. I don't think that the Vikings necessarily addressed enough of their defensive line this offseason. Now, granted, there were some salary cap issues. We picked up Dean Lowry, who is a good player, maybe not an elite player. Marcus Davenport has yet to play for us, and any real snaps, and we'll see if he's going to go tonight. I'm with you, man. As a former linebacker that understands the importance of playing behind some absolute studs, I had the Williams wall. Pat and Kevin were amazing, and Kevin probably still doesn't get enough credit for how good he was as a 3 technique. Yeah. I played right behind Jared Allen. So I'm with you. I think I'm still old school enough to think that and truly believe that you are going to win a lot of football games, if nothing else, because your offensive line and your defensive line can beat people up. And, you mentioned the different packages with Flores last week. It's great. I love it. But again, there's still a time where on first down, you just bring 4 guys, you have you guys play coverage, you just have your linebackers play on their toes, you stop the run, and you don't have to do anything exotic. I think a lot of times you can overthink things. You can get this comfort zone where you just feel like you have to blitz or pressure or give the sense of blitzing or pressuring on early downs. And that can actually kind of hurt you a little bit where you got guys, overthinking on defense all the time about the next check, the next adjustment. I got to show here, but drop here and do all this other stuff. Sometimes just line up and punch a guy in the mouth.
Yeah, you would fit in quite well here in Philadelphia. That's a very much a Philadelphia thing. When in doubt, punch him in the mouth. All right, so I'm going to ask you. Vikings scored touchdown 13 minutes to go in the 4th quarter to get the game knotted at 17 last week. Baker Mayfield engineers a field goal drive, but time left on the clock. Certainly time for a response. The Vikings didn't give it. If you take away the first 45 minutes of the game and say, well, tied with 14 minutes to go, let's go, see who wins. Vikings lose the game more because of their offense or their defense last week?
Oh, more because of their offense for sure. You give the ball away 3 times in the first half, 2 in the red zone. That's points, lots of points right there.
Right, I'm just looking at the last 14 minutes. If you look at the last 14 minutes, tied at 17, wipe away everything else. Those last 14 minutes, more responsible. The defense for letting the Tampa Bay go down and get the field goal, or the offense for not being able to put up any points themselves?
No, definitely the offense. And I'll say this, and I'll say this, that you look at the end of the game, and you could feel it when the game was going on. Like, why are we not run the football much? We end up with 17 rushes. 3 of those were Kirk Cousins scrambles. So 14 rushes by the 2 running backs. We did not do enough to create any semblance of balance. We did not scare that defense at all. We did not put that defense on their heels at all. And you have to put that work in the first 3 quarters on a defense to make them think, are we going to run or are we going to pass? We gashed them a little bit in the run game by Alexander Madison going right up the gut. We went right after that defense. Second play of the game, we went 7 yards up the gut. The big 16-play drive that we had in the third quarter, I think the first play of the game, we went 9 yards up the gut. And then you guys, we just we do everything sort of off tackle, and that's not Alexander Madison's deal. Like, he's not Dalvin Cook. He is a downhill bruising guy. He'll make a guy miss, believe me. He'll make a guy miss. Rarely does he get tackled by the first guy. Get that dude downhill. We didn't do enough to get our offensive line to push downhill. And I really think when it came down to those crunch time situations, we were too predictable. They knew 100% we were just going to throw the ball. And they're just going to live with the fact that, all right, if they do run, we'll just rally up and make the tackle. And that's the thing that does worry me about tonight, again, is you guys' ability to sit back in coverage and just rally and make all these tackles for 2 or 3 yard gains. We have to find a way, especially that's what happened late in last week's game. We did not run the ball enough. We did not scare them with a run.
Rewind to week 2 last season, Ben. Same thing. Vikings come in to face the Eagles. Probably the worst, I would say, Justin Jefferson game of his career. Is he got a chip on his shoulder this week? Because that's scary from a Philadelphia perspective. Because I think that kind of fueled him to have the season he had. Because if I remember, he was kind of peeved off. They let him play. Slay was all over him. He had a lot of physicality. And Darius admitted that to me. But I think he had a little chip on his shoulder after the game. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder right now. The contract situation didn't go the way that he was probably hoping. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the interception that we threw to KJ Osborne right at the goal line, and the return, he laid probably the biggest hit of the whole weekend. Justin Jefferson did. That's just the way he plays. I think he has a chip on his shoulder to go out and prove that he's a dog. He's got that dog mentality that he can be a true leader of this franchise, and he's going to lay it on the line no matter what. His attitude, his words that he's talked about with this game coming up, you can hear a different sense of urgency with him. And he knows, you go back to last year's game, he was responsible for that interception in the end zone. He ran the wrong route. That's as great as Justin is. Sometimes that he's not on the right page with Kirk. You guys know, Kirk by now, everybody knows that he's a very cerebral guy. Like, rarely does he make the mistake on some of these throws. He knows where everybody's supposed to be and how they're supposed to be there. In that particular pass last year, he was expecting Justin to cut across the face. He didn't. That's what he was supposed to do. And he throws it to a spot and it gets picked off. And so I think he's got a lot to prove because of the physicality that he faced last year, and because he's got some redemption. He wants to go down and help this team win and do it, not just catching the football, but doing everything right.
Ben, being a defensive coordinator in Philadelphia is a very unique position, because the fan base here appreciates aggression over results. If you're a blitzer, if you're going to take chances, if you're going to punch a guy in the mouth, you're going to be beloved here in Philadelphia. If you're going to play Vic Fangio's bend but don't break defense, you're going to come under scrutiny like Jonathan Gannon did last year. Coach Flores is a different kind of defensive coordinator that you've now got there in Minnesota. The number 1 percentage week 1 in percentage of blitzes. He would fit very well here in Philadelphia with the way the Philadelphia fan base thinks about how defensive football should be played. How's he being received in Minnesota? Number 1, most importantly, by the defensive players he has, and number 2, by the Viking fan base.
Oh, everybody loves him. Everybody loves him. I mean, he's not one for words. He's not going to try to win you over in a press conference, but he says like all the right things and all the things that you need a guy like that to say. Doesn't totally elaborate on anything, but I've met him privately. I think he's a tremendous person. Really get along with him. And I think the public, really got tired last year, like you mentioned, Jody, of the bend but don't break. So many throws over the middle of the field in that 10 to 12 yard area, just getting daggered all the time. And the lack of bringing pressure, it really frustrated a lot of people. So already in game one. The fans love him. Talking to Harrison Smith and some of the other guys, Cam Bynum, about it. And I asked them in the offseason, it looks like there's so much going on. We defensively call it, spaghetti on a plate. There's guys going everywhere in all directions. Like, is it as complicated as it looks? And they said, no, it's actually one of the most simple defenses that we played in. And actually, he gives us a lot of freedom to do what we want. Yeah, there's some disguise things going on. Yeah, we're moving around a lot. There's a lot of movement, but there's simplicity to his coverages. He's like, we don't really have to think as much as people think we do. So they really appreciate that from a player standpoint. And they said, we go into him with questions, concerns. He listens to us. He makes changes in practice. So the players feel empowered by the fact that they have some ownership over this defense. It's not just Brian Flores' defense.
The change that we talked about, Ben, the extremes, as he kind of mentioned, with Ed's defense here in Philadelphia, Jonathan Gannon was in Minnesota as an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably got to know him a little bit, but he was not very popular here for the same reason. Soft defense, not that aggressive. But the Eagles were successful, number 2 in the NFL, made the Super Bowl, but they kind of blew up in the second half of the Super Bowl. And Nick Sirianni, Jonathan got the head coaching job in Arizona. Nick Sirianni stayed the course, though. He hired Sean Desai, another Vic Fangio guy, same defense. I say that to ask you the question, does it concern you at all that Kevin made that change? Like, if you believe that's the defense, that's the scheme you should be playing one year, and then all of a sudden you take a complete 180, does that concern you at all?
No, it doesn't concern me at all, especially when you're getting a guy that's proven. I think it'd be one thing if he goes out and hires a guy that, is part of a pressure system, is part of a really aggressive defense, but has never done it at that level, never called the plays. The fact that Brian Flores has a reputation that preceded him, I think that's what kind of gave him some comfort, is knowing what he did in Miami, knowing the development that you see from those teams in Miami, and obviously his exposure to Bill Belichick really helps. So no, I think it is still kind of specific to the person. The nice thing is it's still a 3-4 defense. There's 3-4 multiple hybrid defenses. They're base guys, 5 on the defensive line or the line of scrimmage. So I think if we made a drastic shift from we've been a 4-3 for such a long time, we go to a 3-4. Now you have to find the right guys for that. And then if we went back to a 4-3, that's where I think we would have said, come on, this is a little bit too much. We haven't even developed into these players to play this position. But no, I think Flores has done it. He's proven it, and that's why I brought him in.
All right. Last year, the Vikings had a dynamite regular season. 13 wins, only one game off the Eagles at 14 wins, most successful regular seasons in the National Football League, but then get their ouster first round, get beaten by the Giants. All in all, I think you had to call last year's season a success. So now we're in year 2, game 2 of year 2 of the Kevin O'Connell era in Minnesota. Give me the Vikings head coach number 1 strength and number 1 weakness.
Ooh, I think his biggest weak or biggest strength is his ability to call plays and be creative. I think he and Wes Phillips have this great synergy between each other of understanding really how to attack defenses in the passing game. We've seen it time and time again where they just seem to make the right call at the right time, and the execution is perfect. You look at young Jordan Addison, who's already, was known as a very high football IQ, but to get him up and running already to be a major contributor to this team in week 1, I think it kind of speaks to their coaching staff and what he has in him as a coach. I would say his biggest weakness is probably going away from the run too early. Last year, even with Dalvin Cook, I asked him in the post-game press conference in our little sit down for KFN radio that, just basically what happened to the run game. And he would admit, on air publicly, hey, I've got to do a better job with that. We got a little bit off balance. We're looking for a little bit more balance in run pass ratio. And, I just got in my head that we had to throw the ball for this, that, and the other. And he's like, I'll make that change as we go ahead. And I think we had that conversation, 3 or 4 times in the season where he continues to kind of blame himself for not running the ball more, not having the right type of runs in the right situations. I know he doesn't want to be predictable, but he also still understands that there is a balance that needs to be done. So I would say right now, still in like I mentioned earlier, 14 runs by your running backs, and not necessarily the type of runs that you want to see Alexander Madison run. That he has to find a way to get out of the pass first mode and run the ball more.
I can't I have a linebacker here, so I have to ask you a linebacker question, Ben. They've devalued that position here in Philadelphia dramatically. I mean, they haven't taken an off-ball linebacker in the first round since 1976. We talk about it constantly. Now, it's gotten much worse under Howie Roseman. They only kept 3. Kobe Dean's injured right off the bat. They got to do all this roster manipulation. Some teams, Chicago, paid $100 million to off-ball linebackers. But overall, the position has been devalued in the NFL. As a former linebacker, do you see it that way? I know you don't agree with it. You can't agree with it.
No, I don't agree with it. It's fascinating to me that everybody looks to the linebackers. I don't know.
And then they don't want to, to use assets on linebackers. It's amazing to me.
Well, I'll ask you guys, do you guys know any defense in the league that uses a green dot on anybody other than a linebacker? No. I mean, I don't know a safety out there that's using a green dot, certainly not a defensive lineman. So you're basically telling me that the green dot is the quarterback of the defense.
Yeah.
And you don't think that position in and of itself, that responsibility is important? So that's fascinating to me. And, they are the linebackers are the linchpin between the D line and the secondary. And a lot of times when you find that guy, you find that Ray Lewis type of guy, then that is the energy. That is the spark plug. That is, your whole essence as a defense is in that one guy and in that position group. So I don't like it that they're going to give one guy all this responsibility and basically tell everybody how important this position is, but then you don't pay a guy like that, or you don't go out and find a young rookie that can fill that spot. I do understand that it's become a passing league. Pass rushers are going to get a lot of money, and guys that have to protect against the receivers, the corners are going to make a lot of money. But you look at the sole responsibility of what a linebacker does and is, they do need to be respected and paid more.
Is Jordan Hicks that guy for the Vikings? How is he filling that role? Is he the leader of that defense? And with the new defensive coordinator, a new defensive way of doing things, if that role has changed at all for Hicks this year?
Hicks is a good player. I wouldn't say that he's the sole leader of the defense. He's one of the leaders. I think Harrison Smith is probably the true leader of that defense. Right. The one issue with our defense is we got a lot of really good players, great players. Danielle Hunter, not exactly a loud guy. He's he leads by example. And Harrison Smith is a little bit the same way. I'll tell you this right now, you guys. Ivan Pace Jr.
I love that kid. I was going to bring him up.
Yeah.
I love that
how much
kid.
You guys have paid attention to him.
I love the Eagles to bring him in. Yeah.
Johnny's phenomenal. I mean, what he did, the way he moves around the field in just one game from last week, like this guy has it. We're always looking for the it factor. This guy has it. The problem is he's just not very tall. But you look at the way he plays, he understands his weaknesses. He understands he's not a long levered guy. He's not going to hit an offensive lineman and extend these long arms and use that separation to get off the block. He's going to use his quickness. He's going to use angles. He's going to use his speed. He's going to use his brains. He's extremely smart. They trust him with the green dot even as a rookie. So I would say, give it half a year, and if he's on the same trajectory that he's on right now, he may become the vocal leader of this defense. Maybe not from experience, but he may become just kind of the motor of this defense, and guys will try to emulate his tenacity.
Yeah, it's amazing. He was an All-American for people that don't know at Cincinnati. He's a great college player, but he was undersized, doesn't get drafted. I think he was one of the best undrafted kids, and now he's starting with the green dot as a rookie, which is pretty amazing already. He is at Nacho Lieber, Ben Leber, Viking sideline reporter, KFAN. By the way, Paul Allen, I got to mention Paul. Jody's friends with Paul, one of the best in the business. I think Pete Bursich as well, another ex-linebacker, does the radio
good crew
broadcast.
You guys got there.
Yeah, very good crew. So be nice to those guys, Philadelphia, when they're, that
Not
I can only do.
Yeah,
I can only do.
Good luck
so
with
much.
that, John.
I can only do so
it.
much. One last player I want to talk about, I love as well, that's not known, is Josh Metellus. What do you think of him? He seems to be a guy, Lewis Seen they drafted, hasn't been able to get on the field. Brian Asamoah they drafted. Ivan Pace is better than him. I think Metellus is just better than Lewis Seen. And he might be better than Bynum, to be honest. What do you think of Josh?
Well, he's certainly been proven that he's better than first round draft pick Lewis Seen. And everybody loves Josh Metellus. Here's a guy that, was on practice squad to start his rookie year, gets called up. By the end of the year, he's the special teams player of the year. Last year, when Brian O'Neill went down with his Achilles injury, they needed to fill the captain's role. And it was a unanimous decision that the team said Josh Metellus is our team captain. I mean, it's incredible what he's done from a leadership standpoint. He's obviously earned every single ounce of that respect. And I think that says a lot. And he's now the third safety in our 3-safety package, and he's making plays. The guy's a football player. And sometimes you can't scout that. You just have to know what a football player looks like. And he's got it. So I'm happy for him. He continues to make plays. Both he and Cam Bynum I think are great success stories. Cam, you mentioned Cam, I guess it's subjective. You may think that, he's better than Cam or should get his spot or whatever. The point is, a lot of people doubted Bynum as well. And all he does every game is continue to improve, show that he belongs, show that he's an undersized guy, that, he was a tweener. Is he a corner? Is he a nickel? Is he a safety? He goes out there and earns a spot next to Harrison Smith, and he's playing well. I mean, both of those guys are, hard-nosed dudes that want to go out and make plays. And I'm happy that we found Metellus, man. He's a special talent.
All right. I got two last questions for you, Ben. First one is, no one's really listening to this. It's just you and me and John sitting around, so you can be very honest with us. What's the fastest you ever went on I-94? And I'm guessing you didn't get as fast as Jordan Addison did in his Maserati.
Oh boy.
I've definitely pushed it. I think I've been like 120 before.
120. Going down to Mankato, when you guys had to go to Mankato, because I've made that drive many times, Ben. There used to be, I think, an arrest every year with guys speeding down to Mankato. So
yeah. I never had a Lamborghini though.
No, that'll cut into your overall time. I think it was John who told me that it just lends itself. The road is out there in the middle of it lends itself to going 100 miles an hour, and Jordan just pushed it on 140. My other last question is, and I'm being honest here. I asked you to be honest, so I'm going to be honest. I quasi remembered 2012. John Lieber getting a workout with the Philadelphia Eagles. That
Ben Leber, not John. John's the pitcher.
John, right. Not a bad pitcher, ex-Philly. Ben Leber getting a workout with the Eagles. Didn't work out, didn't sign. How close was it? Could you have finished your career in Philadelphia? Was it close?
I got to be honest. I don't think it was close. You know, I was coming off a knee surgery. You know, I knew my knee was banged up. It had been banged up for a couple of years, and you know, it was bone on bone at the time. And I thought by getting it cleaned up, getting some of the debris out of it would help. And I came back and I did the workout, and you know, I feel like it was a good workout, but my movement just wasn't there. You know, my deceleration wasn't there, and they saw it. You know, they're like, "Hey, man, you know, the knee's just not where we want to see it." And so it was definitely more of a medical thing that you know, had I gotten more healthy, maybe did another tryout in a month or two, then it's possible. I was motivated, you know, I wanted to, but my knee just wasn't responding, and you know, at that point in time, it's like, you know, you live with knee pain, and you live with, you know, you can't sleep at night because your bones hurt. That was my cue that I probably just need to hang it up. So, you know, I stopped playing the game before I think Philly really had a chance to see me at full strength.
You got to 10 seasons though, right? So that's a heck of an accomplishment. Heck of a player too, Ben Leber.
Yeah, thank you.
And we thank you so much for joining us today. One last little note. Don't listen to anything that Robbie Rosenfeld tells you. Guy who works for KFA. He's a buddy of mine from New York. He'll lead you astray. He'll get you out at the track and losing money without. You want no part of going to the Canterbury Downs with those guys. Stay away from that at all costs. Stay off I-94. You'll be fine. If you stay off the highway and you stay out of Canterbury Downs, you're going to do great. And we're sure you will tonight. Feel free to body slam Howard Eskin if you see him down in the field. He's a buddy. He'll be trying to outdress you.
Yeah, the Vikings have the edge on sideline reporters. If it comes down to sideline reporters, you guys are going to win the game. I guarantee.
Oh, man. Well, you guys are the best, man. This was a lot of fun. Let's do this again sometime.
Tell our boy, Appreciate Mr. Allen, we send our regards when you get on the air with him tonight. Thanks for jumping in with us tonight.
Will do.
That is Ben Leber, former Viking linebacker, sideline reporter, does Twin Cities Live on Minnesota television. Good dude and a good spot. Hope you enjoyed that. All right, Mac coming back. We got to put a bow on the show before Eagles Vikings. I can tell you what John's score is. Well, I'll let him do it, even though listening earlier where you know what John's score is going to be. I'll give you my score in tonight's game next here on Birds 365.